The wind whispered secrets across the sprawling Texas landscape, carrying with it the distant rumble of jet engines that seemed to speak directly to Sarah Martinez's soul. Her hometown of Esperanza, ironically meaning hope in Spanish, was nothing more than a collection of weathered buildings nestled against the harsh border terrain, where dreams typically went to die and ambitions withered under the relentless sun. Maria and Roberto Martinez weren't the kind of parents who understood wild dreams. Her mother, a dedicated elementary school teacher, believed in practical paths. Her father, a mechanic with oil-stained hands and calloused fingers, knew the weight of hard work more intimately than the luxury of imagination. They loved their daughter fiercely, but spoke the language of survival, not aspiration. Sarah's obsession with flight began on her 8th birthday. A military air show passed near their small town, transforming the dusty landscape into a canvas of technological marvel, while other children covered their ears at the thunderous roar. Sarah stood transfixed, her small frame trembling not with fear, but with an inexplicable recognition. The F-16 fighters sliced through the sky like silver arrows, leaving trails of possibility in their wake. That day, everything changed. Her father noticed her unblinking stare, the way her body leaned forward as if the planes were magnetic. "Those aren't for people like us, Mija," he said softly, not to crush her spirit, but to prepare her for a world that seemed designed to limit her potential. But Sarah heard something different in his words, a challenge disguised as a warning. The local library became her sanctuary. While other kids her age were playing video games or watching television, Sarah devoured every book about aviation she could find. Biographies of test pilots, technical manuals about aerodynamics, historical accounts of aerial warfare. She consumed them with a hunger that surprised even herself. Her bedroom walls, once decorated with posters of pop stars, transformed into a makeshift museum of aviation history. Her classmates thought she was strange. The girls whispered about makeup and boys. Sarah calculated wind resistance and studied the principles of lift. When asked about her future, she would describe flying with such vivid detail that her teachers alternated between being impressed and concerned. A Latina girl from a working-class border town didn't typically dream of becoming a military pilot. But Sarah saw the world differently. Each restriction became a puzzle to solve. Each no was merely an invitation to prove otherwise. Her academic performance was impeccable not because she wanted to impress her teachers, but because she understood that education was her ticket to the sky. Mathematics wasn't just numbers to her, it was the language of flight. Physics wasn't a subject, it was the poetry of motion. Her mother worried. There are easier paths, Maria would say, watching her daughter sketch intricate diagrams of aircraft during family dinners, teaching, nursing, office work. But Sarah's eyes would drift to the window, where the horizon seemed to beckon with an irresistible promise. By the time she reached high school, Sarah's reputation was cemented. She was the girl who knew more about aerospace engineering than most college students. Her high school guidance counselor, Mr. Thompson, a retired Air Force veteran, was the first adult who didn't try to temper her dreams. "You got the mind for it," he told her during a pivotal conversation in his office, surrounded by military memorabilia. But wanting something and achieving it are the very different things, especially for someone like you. The someone like you hung in the era-loaded phrase that encompassed her gender, her ethnicity, her socioeconomic background. But to Sarah, it wasn't a limitation, it was fuel. Her strategy was methodical. While other students prepared for traditional careers, she designed her entire academic path around her singular goal. Advanced placement courses in physics and mathematics, weekend workshops on aeronautical engineering, summer programs that introduced her to the complex world of military aviation. Her family didn't understand, but they supported her. Her father would work extra shifts, secretly setting aside money for her potential education. Her mother would proofread scholarship applications, her lips moving silently as she read each carefully crafted sentence. The night before her ROTC application was due, Sarah stood in her modest bedroom. Aircraft models hung from the ceiling. Engineering diagrams covered her walls. She looked like a general planning a complex military campaign, which, in many ways, she was. This wasn't just a dream. This was a mission. The room was silent except for the soft sound of her breathing and the distant howl of desert. Wind that seemed to carry the promise of runways, of horizons yet unexplored, of a future that existed beyond the limited imagination of those who had come before her. Sarah Martinez was going to fly, not just fly but redefine what it meant to touch the sky. The University of Texas campus looked different to Sarah Martinez, not as a landscape of academic promise, but as a battlefield. Her first day in the Air Force or OTC program felt like stepping into enemy territory where every glance was a potential weapon and every interaction a test of survival. The morning briefing room buzzed with a toxic mixture of testosterone and barely concealed hostility. 27 male cadets and 1 Sarah Martinez. The numbers weren't just statistics, they were a statement. She could feel the weight of their collective skepticism pressing against her. Like a physical force, Captain Michael Reese, their primary instructor, was an old-school military man with a face carved from granite and eyes that seemed to look through people rather than at them. His initial briefing was less an orientation and more a psychological warfare exercise. "Some of you won't make it," he announced, his voice a controlled thunderstorm. "And some of you," his eyes locked directly on Sarah, "definitely won't make it." The unspoken message was clear. She was an intruder, an anomaly to be eliminated. Physical training became her first true test. While the male cadets approached each exercise with a competitive swagger, Sarah treated them like precise mathematical equations to be solved. Push-ups weren't just about strength, they were about technique, about breaking down each movement into its most efficient components. She discovered quickly that surviving meant more than matching her male counterparts. She needed to outperform them consistently. A single moment of weakness would be interpreted as proof of her supposed inadequacy. Where they saw brute strength, she saw strategy. Where they pushed through with raw aggression, she calculated and optimized. The whispers were constant. Diversity candidate, affirmative action recruit, she'll wash out before midterms. Each phrase was designed to chip away at her confidence, to make her question her belonging. But Sarah had been preparing for this her entire life. Her academic performance was impeccable, while her fellow cadets struggled with advanced aerodynamics and complex mission planning scenarios. She dissected each challenge with surgical precision. Her notebooks were works of art, detailed diagrams, complex calculations, strategic annotations that revealed a mind operating on a different frequency. Physical training became her statement of defiance. She didn't just meet the male standard, she redefined it. When standard push-up protocols demanded 40 repetitions, she would do 60. When required to run 5 miles, she would add sprint intervals. Every exercise was an opportunity to prove that she wasn't just participating, she was dominating. Her breakthrough came during a particularly grueling survival training exercise in the harsh Texas wilderness, a simulated mission scenario that had broken multiple previous training groups. Became her moment of absolute transformation. The exercise demanded not just physical endurance, but complex problem solving under extreme stress. Teams were required to navigate challenging terrain, complete strategic objectives, and demonstrate leadership under simulated combat conditions. While her teammates fragmented under pressure, Sarah became the quiet center of calm. Her navigation was flawless. Her decision-making was instantaneous. When their team's communication equipment failed, she jury-rigged a solution using minimal resources, demonstrating an engineering intuition that left even the most skeptical instructors speechless. Captain Reese watched her with a mixture of grudging respect and lingering doubt. The other cadets began to realize something fundamental. Sarah Martinez wasn't just trying to prove she belonged, she was rewriting the entire definition of belonging. Her roommate, Emily Rodriguez, another rare female cadet in a different program, became her unexpected ally. Late-night study sessions transformed into strategic planning meetings, where they discussed not just academic challenges, but the broader systemic barriers they faced. "They want us to break," Emily would say during their marathon study sessions. But breaking isn't an option. Sarah's approach was methodical. She understood that her battle wasn't just against her immediate peers, but against generations of institutional resistance. Each challenge was a data point, each obstacle an opportunity to demonstrate her exceptional capabilities. By midterm evaluations, the narrative had begun to shift. The whispers changed from doubtful to confused. How could someone they had written off be consistently outperforming not just the average, but the top performers? Her flight simulation scores were unprecedented. Her physical fitness metrics shattered previous departmental records. Her strategic analysis during mock missions revealed a level of intuition that seemed to predict challenges before they fully materialized. She wasn't just a cadet anymore. She was becoming a phenomenon The system that was designed to eliminate her was slowly, inexorably being forced to recognize her extraordinary potential. Each day was a battle, each achievement a revolution. Sarah Martinez was transforming the very DNA of military aviation, one impossible challenge at a time. The wings came with a price and a nickname that would define her entire career. Graduation from advanced flight training was supposed to be a moment of pure triumph. For Sarah Martinez, it became a crucible of survival, pride, and unexpected transformation. The final assessment wasn't just a test of flying skills. It was a psychological warfare exercise designed to break the spirits of even the most determined candidates. Lieutenant Jack Hawkins, the most senior instructor in the program, had a reputation for destroying dreams. His mockery was surgical, his criticism razor-sharp. When he first looked at Sarah's file, he saw everything he believed didn't belong. In military aviation, a woman, a border town kid, someone who didn't fit the traditional pilot mold. Martinez, he called during a pre-flight briefing, his voice dripping with calculated condescension. "We've got a special mission for you today. Let's see if your little academic prowess translates to actual flying." The mission was intentionally designed as an impossible scenario, a complex search and rescue operation in simulated mountainous terrain, with multiple mechanical failures programmed into the flight systems. Instructors had watched countless top-tier candidates crumble under similar conditions. Candidates with more traditional backgrounds, more suitable profiles. Sarah knew this wasn't just a test. It was an execution. Her call sign emerged from that moment, a cruel joke that would become her most powerful weapon. One of the junior instructors, watching her prepare, muttered sarcastically, "Look at this Angel, thinking she can fly." Another added, "Yeah, Angel-01, because she'll need divine intervention to survive this." The name stuck, but Sarah understood something profound about nicknames. They only have power if you allow them to. The simulation began at 05:00 hours, pitch black darkness, simulated equipment failures, communication disruptions, a perfect storm designed to overwhelm. Most pilots would have requested abort protocols. Sarah saw it differently. Each failure was a puzzle, each challenge an opportunity to demonstrate her extraordinary capabilities. When the primary navigation system failed, she seamlessly shifted the backup protocols. As hydraulic pressure dropped in the left wing control surfaces, she compensated with micro adjustments that would have been impossible for a less intuitive pilot. Her hands moved with a combination of mathematical precision and almost supernatural intuition. The other pilots watched in stunned silence through the observation windows. Captain Reese, who had once doubted her most intensely, leaned forward, his coffee forgotten, watching something unprecedented unfold. Hawkins's voice crackled through the radio, each communication designed to break her concentration. "Angel-01, you're drifting off course. Abort mission." The words were a trap, an invitation to panic, to prove she didn't belong. But Sarah Martinez didn't speak panic's language. Her response was clinical, negative. Mission parameters remain viable. Continuing approach. Her voice was calm, almost eerily so. Each word a surgical instrument cutting through the manufactured tension. What happened next would become legend in aviation training circles. Not only did she complete the mission, but she did so with a level of precision that rewrote the training manual's expectations. The search and rescue scenario, which typically had a 30% successful completion rate, was executed with near-perfect efficiency. When she landed, the silence was deafening. Lieutenant Hawkins approached her, his previous mockery replaced by something closer to genuine respect. "Angel-01, he said, and for the first time, the nickname carried no derision. "I've never seen anything like that." The call sign was no longer a weapon used against her. It had become her brand, her identity. Sarah understood the deeper victory. This wasn't just about proving she could fly. This was about fundamentally challenging every preconceived notion about who could be a military pilot. Her success wasn't just personal, it was institutional. Her fellow cadets, who had previously whispered and mocked, now looked at her with a mixture of respect and something close to awe. The nickname that was meant to diminish her had become her greatest strength. Angel-01 wasn't just a call sign anymore. It was a declaration of war against every limitation society had tried to impose. During the graduation ceremony, when her name was called, the applause was different. Not polite, not perfunctory, but a genuine recognition of something extraordinary. Her parents sat in the audience, her father's callous hands clasped together. her mother wiping away tears. They had watched their daughter transform the impossible into the inevitable. The wings they pinned on her uniform weren't just a certification of flight capability. They were a testament to a journey that had defied every expectation. Sarah Martinez had entered the program. As an outsider, she was leaving as a legend. Angel-01 had arrived. The advanced tactical evaluation wasn't just another mission. It was the crucible that would define entire careers, a simulated scenario so complex that it had become legendary among military aviators. Pilots spoke about it in hushed tones. A modern-day trial by fire that separated true tactical geniuses from mere competent flyers. Sarah Martinez knew this was her moment. The mission briefing room felt like a pressure chamber. Senior commanders, tactical analysts, and training officers watched her with a mixture of skepticism and barely concealed anticipation. She was the first female pilot to be considered for this particular evaluation, a fact that hung in the air like static. Electricity. Colonel James Harriman, a decorated veteran with 4 decades of military experience, studied her file one last time. His weathered fingers traced the detailed performance reports. Looking for the slightest weakness, what he found instead was a pattern of exceptional performance that defied conventional expectations. Martinez, he began, his voice a controlled rumble. This isn't just about flying. This is about making split-second decisions that can save or cost hundreds of lives. The scenario was a nightmare of tactical complexity, a multi-stage mission simulating a high-risk extraction in a politically volatile region with multiple moving parts that would challenge even the most experienced pilots. Mechanical failures, communication disruptions, rapidly changing geopolitical conditions. It was designed to push human capabilities to their absolute limit. Most pilots would approach such a mission with a combination of aggression and technical precision. Sarah saw it differently. To her, this was a three-dimensional chess match played at 30,000 feet, where every decision created a cascade of potential outcomes. Her preparation had been meticulous, while other pilots relied solely on standard training protocols. Sarah had developed her own approach. She'd studied every available mission report, analyzed countless tactical scenarios, and developed a unique decision-making matrix that integrated traditional military strategy with cutting-edge predictive analysis. The simulation began at 0300 hours. Darkness enveloped the initial approach. Communication channels crackled with intentional interference. The first mechanical challenge came 17 minutes into the mission, a simulated hydraulic failure that would have grounded lesser pilots. Sarah's response was instantaneous. Where others would panic, she saw an opportunity to demonstrate her extraordinary adaptability. Her hands moved across the control panel with a combination of mathematical precision and intuitive brilliance. Each adjustment was calculated, each response a testament to her exceptional training and natural talent. The mission's complexity increased exponentially. Simulated enemy radar tracked her movements. Political complications emerged that would have paralyzed most tactical teams. Sarah processed information at a speed that seemed almost superhuman, her mind working like a quantum computer, analyzing multiple potential scenarios simultaneously. Colonel Harriman and the other observers watched in stunned silence. This wasn't just flying. This was a fundamental reimagining of tactical aerial operations. At a critical moment, the simulation presented an impossible choice. Standard protocols suggested retreat. Traditional tactical thinking would have recommended a conservative approach. Sarah did something entirely unexpected. She went on the offensive. Her approach wasn't just about completing the mission, it was about redefining what was possible. She used the simulated aircraft's limitations as strengths, turning potential weaknesses into tactical advantages that the mission designers hadn't even considered. When the final evaluation concluded, the briefing room was silent. Colonel Harriman was the first to speak. In all my years, he said, his voice uncharacteristically soft, "I've never seen anything like that." The statement carried the weight of a lifetime of military experience. The numbers told a stark story. Where previous top-tier candidates had a success rate of barely 40% on this simulation, Sarah had achieved a 97.3% mission effectiveness rating. But numbers told only a fraction of the story. What she had demonstrated was something far more profound. This wasn't just about technical skill. This was about a fundamental approach to problem-solving that challenged every existing paradigm of military aviation. Her fellow pilots looked at her differently now. The whispers that had once been dismissive now carried a tone of genuine respect. Angel-01 was no longer just a call sign, it was becoming a legend. As she walked out of the briefing room, Sarah understood something fundamental. Her battle was never just about proving she could fly, it was about expanding the very definition of what was possible. The military had designed a test to break her. Instead, she had rewritten the entire mission parameters. Angel-01 had arrived and the world would never be the same. The Andes cut through the landscape like a jagged wound, a mountain range that had claimed more lives than any battlefield. When the distress call came in, most pilots would have hesitated. Sarah Martinez heard something different, a symphony of impossible challenges waiting to be conquered. 0 hours. The briefing room was a crucible of tension. Intelligence reports painted a brutal picture. A scientific expedition, 3 researchers and to support staff had been stranded for 72 hours in one of the most unforgiving terrains on the planet. Temperatures plummeted to -30 degrees Celsius. Oxygen levels were dangerously low. Previous rescue attempts had failed spectacularly. This isn't a standard extraction, Major Richards warned, spreading topographical maps that looked more like scars than geographical features. We're talking about a zone where most aircraft would never dare to enter. Wind shear that can tear apart a helicopter. Terrain so unpredictable, it rewrites aerodynamic principles with every passing hour. Sarah studied the maps like they were living, breathing entities. Where others saw impossible obstacles, she saw a complex mathematical problem waiting to be solved. Her call sign crackled over the radio. Angel-01, ready for mission parameters. The aircraft was a specially modified rescue helicopter, the most advanced in the military's arsenal. But advanced technology meant nothing without the right pilot. And Sarah Martinez was anything but an ordinary pilot. As she lifted off, the night swallowed the helicopter. Radar systems flickered with warning signals. Winds that should have forced any rational pilot to abort seemed to challenge her directly. Each gust was a test, each mountain peak a potential executioner. 30 minutes into the mission, everything went wrong. Primary communication systems failed. The helicopter's left side hydraulics began to destabilize. Instrument readings became increasingly erratic. This was the moment most pilots would have initiated emergency retreat protocols. Sarah saw opportunity. Her hands moved across the control panel with a surgeon's precision. Where standard training suggested one approach, she improvised. She understood the helicopter not just as a machine, but as a living system that could be coaxed, negotiated with, pushed beyond its design limitations. The mountain range became a three-dimensional chess match. Each movement was a calculated risk. Wind currents that should have been deadly became her allies. She used the terrain's own brutality against itself, finding microcorridors of stability where others would have seen only certain destruction. Inside the rescue zone, the stranded team had almost lost hope. Dr. Eleanor Rodriguez, the expedition's lead scientist, had been tracking their chances of survival with clinical detachment. Hypothermia was setting in. Oxygen levels were critically low. They had begun the grim process of preparing for the inevitable. But Sarah Martinez didn't understand the word inevitable. Her approach defied every standard rescue protocol. She didn't fight the mountain, she danced with it. The helicopter moved like a living creature, finding impossible angles, utilizing wind patterns that shouldn't have been survivable. The rescue team on the ground watched in disbelief as Angel-01 seemed to negotiate with the mountain itself. Sarah's communication was sparse, clinical, incredibly focused. Preparing extraction. Stand by for immediate evacuation. It wasn't a request. It was a promise. The extraction was a ballet of impossible precision, with hydraulic systems failing, with visibility near zero, with every conceivable system warning of imminent catastrophic failure. Sarah Martinez executed a rescue that would be studied in aviation schools for decades. Not a single life was lost. When they touched down at the base medical facility, the rescue team looked at her like she was something more than human. Dr. Rodriguez, her face still bearing the marks of her ordeal, approached Sarah. How? She asked, her voice a mixture of scientific curiosity and pure wonder. Sarah's response was characteristically understated. Physics, mathematics, a little bit of intuition. The mission report was later read like a technical manual. But those who were there, those who witnessed it, knew they had seen something extraordinary. A pilot who didn't just fly an aircraft, but seemed to understand the fundamental language of motion, of survival, of pushing beyond known limitations. Colonel Harriman, reviewing the mission logs, could only shake his head in profound respect. The reports didn't just document a successful rescue, they documented a paradigm shift. Angel-01 had become more than a call sign. It was a declaration that impossible was just a matter of perspective. As Sarah Martinez walked away from the medical facility, the weight of the mission hung around her like a subtle halo. She hadn't just saved lives. She had redefined what human capability could mean at the intersection of skill, courage, and pure, unbridled determination. The Pentagon wasn't prepared for Sarah Martinez. What began as a remarkable individual career transformed into a full-scale institutional revolution. Her success was more than personal achievement. It was a systematic dismantling of generations of systemic barriers that had kept women and minorities marginalized in military aviation. Her office became a command center of change. Located in a nondescript building at Edwards Air Force Base, it was anything but ordinary. Walls covered with complex mission analyses, statistical breakdowns of pilot performance, and strategic proposals that challenged every existing paradigm of military training. The numbers told a story more powerful than words. Sarah's pilot training program redesign reduced failure rates by 63% across diverse candidate pools. Her mentorship initiatives saw a 400% increase in women and minority candidates successfully completing advanced flight training. But numbers were just the beginning. Each candidate she mentored became a weapon against institutional inertia. Maria Gonzalez, a brilliant engineer from East Los Angeles. Aisha Thompson, who grew up in a low-income neighborhood in Detroit. Michael Chen, a first-generation American whose parents had worked multiple jobs to support his education. These weren't just pilots, they were a movement. Sarah understood something fundamental that her predecessors had missed. Diversity wasn't a checkbox, it was a strategic advantage. Her training programs didn't just welcome different perspectives, they weaponized them. She developed a revolutionary training approach that dismantled traditional military hierarchies. Psychological assessments that looked beyond physical capabilities. Simulation scenarios that tested adaptability over raw strength. Leadership modules that valued emotional intelligence as much as tactical decision-making. The old guard pushed back, of course. Senior commanders who had built careers on traditional training methods saw her as a threat. Anonymous reports, bureaucratic roadblocks, subtle attempts to marginalize her influence. Sarah saw these as opportunities, not obstacles. Her most powerful weapon was data, meticulously collected, ruthlessly analyzed. She could prove, with mathematical precision, that her approach wasn't just more inclusive, it was demonstrably more effective. During a critical congressional hearing, she delivered a presentation that would become legendary. Dressed in her military uniform, data projections behind her, she dismantled decades of institutional resistance with surgical precision. Diversity isn't a weakness, she told the assembled committee. It's our greatest strategic asset. Our ability to solve complex problems depends on bringing together the most diverse set of perspectives possible. The room fell silent. Her mentorship extended beyond formal training, late-night strategy sessions, personal interventions for candidates facing systemic challenges. She became more than an instructor, she was an architect of possibility. One particular initiative stood out. The Horizon program targeted candidates from backgrounds traditionally excluded from military aviation. Full scholarships, comprehensive support systems, mentorship that extended far beyond standard military training. Major General Elizabeth Hartley, one of the few female generals in the Air Force, became her most powerful ally. You're not just changing a training program, she told Sarah during a private strategy meeting. You're rewriting the entire DNA of military culture. The personal cost was significant. Constant scrutiny, endless battles against institutional resistance, media attention that dissected every aspect of her professional and personal life. But Sarah Martinez had never been one to back down from a challenge. Her most powerful moments happened in unexpected places. Classrooms where young cadets saw someone who looked like them. Leading complex mission briefings. Training facilities where traditional barriers dissolved under the weight of her demonstrated excellence. She developed a comprehensive leadership model that the entire military began to study. Emotional resilience, adaptive thinking, strategic empathy. These weren't soft skills, they were tactical advantages. International military delegations began requesting her consultation. Her approach wasn't just transforming the United States military, it was becoming a global blueprint for institutional change. During a critical NATO conference, she delivered a keynote that redefined military leadership. Our greatest weapon, she told the assembled international commanders, isn't technology. It's our ability to bring together the most diverse set of perspectives and turn them into an unbreakable strategic advantage. The standing ovation lasted several minutes, but for Sarah, this was never about personal recognition. Each candidate she mentored, each systemic barrier she dismantled, each training protocol she revolutionized, these were her true victories. Angel-01 had become more than a call sign. It was a promise that the sky wasn't a limitation, it was an invitation, a promise that excellence knew no gender, no background, no predetermined limitation, a promise that true revolution happens not through confrontation, but through demonstrating a fundamentally better way of thinking, of operating, of understanding human potential. The military was changing, and Sarah Martinez was leading the charge. The mission was classified, the stakes were global. When the call came, it wasn't just another assignment. It was the culmination of everything Sarah Martinez had fought for, a high-stakes international operation that would test the absolute limits of human capability, technological precision, and strategic thinking. Middle Eastern geopolitical tensions had reached a critical point. A humanitarian crisis was unfolding in a region where political complexities made traditional rescue operations nearly impossible. 3 international aid workers were trapped in a conflict zone, surrounded by unpredictable military factions, with rescue seemingly improbable. Military strategists had developed 3 potential approaches. Each was more dangerous than the last. Each had a projected survival rate that bordered on statistical impossibility. Sarah saw something different. The mission briefing room felt like a pressure chamber. Top military commanders from 3 different nations studied the complex geographical and political terrain, satellite imagery, real-time intelligence reports, diplomatic communication logs, a mosaic of impossible challenges. "We have a 17-minute window," Colonel Richards explained, his finger tracing potential approach vectors. "Any longer, and we risk complete mission failure. Any deviation, and we're looking at an international incident that could trigger a broader conflict." Sarah's mind was already 5 steps ahead. Her preparation wasn't just technical. It was holistic. She had studied every available piece of intelligence, cultural nuances, local military movement patterns, geological terrain characteristics. Where others saw a mission, she saw a complex, living system waiting to be understood. The aircraft was a specially modified stealth transport, the most advanced in the military's arsenal. But advanced technology meant nothing without the right pilot, and Sarah Martinez was anything but an ordinary pilot. As she lifted off, the weight of multiple nations' expectations pressed against her like atmospheric pressure. Her call sign cut through the radio. Angel-01, mission initiated. The approach defied every traditional tactical protocol. Where standard military doctrine suggested a direct approach, Sarah created a fluid, adaptive strategy that seemed to anticipate challenges before they emerged. She didn't just fly the aircraft, she became one with the mission's entire ecosystem. Political boundaries became fluid. Terrain transformed from obstacle to opportunity. Each adjustment was a calculated risk, each movement a complex mathematical equation solved in real time. Inside the rescue zone, the aid workers had nearly lost hope. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the same scientist from her previous mountain rescue, was among the trapped group. Their communication was sparse, their situation critical. But Sarah Martinez didn't understand the word impossible. Her approach was a symphony of technological precision and human intuition. The stealth transport moved like a living creature, finding microcorridors of safety in a landscape designed to destroy wind patterns, terrain features, potential military interception routes. She processed them simultaneously, turning potential threats into strategic advantages. The rescue itself was a ballet of impossible precision, with multiple international military factions potentially tracking the mission, with communication channels constantly shifting, with every conceivable system warning of potential catastrophic failure. Sarah executed an extraction that would redefine international rescue operations. Not a single life was lost. Not a single international protocol was violated. When they touched down at the designated safe zone, the rescued aid workers looked at her with a mixture of scientific wonder and pure disbelief. Dr. Rodriguez approached her, her face still bearing the marks of her ordeal. "How?" she asked, her voice a mixture of professional curiosity and pure amazement. Sarah's response was characteristically understated. Understanding is the first step of any successful mission. The mission report would later become a classified document studied in military academies worldwide. But those who were there knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. A pilot who didn't just follow protocols, but seemed to understand the fundamental language of human potential. International military leaders gathered for a confidential debrief. Commanders from nations that had previously viewed each other with suspicion now studied Sarah's mission approach with genuine respect. This wasn't just a rescue. One senior NATO commander remarked, "This was a masterclass in modern conflict resolution." Her call sign Angel-01 had become more than a name. It was a global symbol of what was possible when human potential was allowed to transcend traditional limitations. As Sarah Martinez walked away from the final briefing, the weight of the mission hung around her like a subtle halo. She hadn't just saved lives. She had demonstrated that true strategic excellence knows no gender, no nationality, no predetermined limitation. The sky was no longer the limit. It was an invitation to redefine what human beings could achieve. When they refused to accept the word impossible, the lecture hall at the United States Air Force Academy was packed. 500 of the most promising young cadets sat in absolute silence, their eyes fixed on a woman who had become more than a legend. She had become a fundamental reimagining of human potential. Sarah Martinez stood at the podium, no longer just Angel-01, but a living testament to what was possible when societal limitations were shattered. Her hair, now streaked with distinguished silver, carried the same intensity that had defined her entire career. Decades of service hadn't diminished her spirit, they had refined it into something approaching pure inspiration. Potential, she began, her voice carrying to the furthest corners of the hall, is not something granted, it's something claimed. The audience leaned forward, collectively holding their breath. Her journey had become more than a personal story. It was a blueprint for institutional transformation that had reshaped not just military aviation, but the entire concept of leadership in the 21st century. The statistics told a remarkable story. The diversity program she had initiated had transformed the military's recruitment and training approach. Women now comprise 42% of advanced flight positions, a number that would have been unimaginable when she first entered the service. Minority representation had increased by nearly 60%, but numbers were just the beginning. What she had truly changed was institutional culture. Her mentorship program had produced a generation of leaders who understood that true strategic advantage came from diverse perspectives. Generals, ambassadors, international peacekeepers, her protégés now occupied critical positions across global institutions. The walls of the lecture hall were lined with photographs, rescue missions, international diplomatic interventions, humanitarian operations that had redefined what military service could mean. Each image told a story of impossible challenges overcome. Sarah's personal collection of awards told only a fraction of her impact. Multiple distinguished flying crosses, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, international humanitarian recognition that crossed traditional boundaries. But she had never been about the accolades. Every limitation, she told the cadets, is an invitation to reimagine what's possible. Her own journey had been anything but traditional. A girl from a small border town who had been told her dreams were impossible. A woman who had been mocked, challenged, and systematically resisted at every turn. She had transformed those challenges into her greatest strengths. The lecture was more than a speech. It was a masterclass in human potential. She spoke about her early days, the challenges, the moments of doubt. But more importantly, she spoke about resilience, about understanding that true leadership wasn't about individual achievement, but about creating pathways for others. Your mission, she told the cadets, is never just about what you can do. It's about what you can enable others to achieve. Young cadets, men and women from every conceivable background, listened with a combination of scientific curiosity and pure inspiration. Some were children of her original mentees. Others were from parts of the world that had been transformed by the institutional changes she had pioneered. Outside the lecture hall, a broader transformation was evident. The military training program she had redesigned had become global models, international peacekeeping missions, humanitarian interventions, complex diplomatic negotiations. Her approach had fundamentally changed how institutions approached human potential. Her research institute, the Martinez Center for Strategic Innovation, was a global think tank that bridged military strategy, humanitarian intervention, and human potential development. Leaders from 6 continents saw her insights, but for Sarah, the true measure of success wasn't in global recognition, it was in the individual stories. Maria Gonzalez, the brilliant engineer from East Los Angeles, who had become a lead aerospace designer. Michael Chen, now a senior diplomatic strategist bridging international conflict zones. Aisha Thompson, who had transformed military medical response protocols. Each was a living testament to her fundamental belief that human potential knew no predetermined limitations. As the lecture concluded, the standing ovation was more than a moment of recognition. It was a collective acknowledgement of a fundamental shift in understanding human capability. Sarah Martinez walked off the stage, but her impact continued to resonate. Angel-01 had become more than a call sign. It was a promise that the sky wasn't a limitation, it was an invitation to every person who had ever been told their dreams were impossible, an invitation to reimagine what human beings could achieve when they refused to accept the word can't. As the sun set outside the academy, casting long shadows across the runway where countless generations of pilots would follow her path, Sarah Martinez smiled. The revolution continued.